Good evening and welcome. My name is Alexander Jones, and I am the boss list of the Epsilon Iota chapter of Omega Psi Fraternity Incorporated. On behalf of the chapter, we welcome you to another season of our Omega Uplift Series. While we are less than a week away from heading back to the polls, we decided to focus this program on the importance of elections and making your vote count. Our Social Action Committee has been diligently working and saw it to be a necessity to have continuous conversations in regards to voter registration, education, and mobilization, and making sure our communities are properly informed. I want to thank our Social Action Committee and its chairman, Brother Gigi Martindale, for putting this program together. Omega men are always hard at work as we continue to answer the many calls around our community. While we are not instructing you on who to cast your ballot for, we simply are trying to provide thorough information through professional expertise and our esteemed panelists in order for people to make an informed decision about this matter. Since the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated was founded on the campus of Howard University 110 years ago, we have been guided by our four cardinal principles of manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. Omega has played and continues to play a vital role in the social and economic growth of our country and enhancing the lives of African Americans. As a fraternity, we are operated under 12 nationally mandated programs, which are centralized around issues in our communities. Epsilon Iota has been a staple by providing service to the greater New Haven community for over 30 years. Before we get started, I would like to share a few reminders. All participants will be muted during the presentation, but we do encourage your active participation by utilizing the chat feature. All questions will be acknowledged at the appropriate time. I would like to take the time and thank our esteemed panelists for agreeing to participate and give their expertise on this very important topic. Our series moderator is a brother who plays many key roles in Omega, not only on the chapter level, but also on the district and international levels. He is also no stranger to the greater New Haven community, where he serves as the head basketball coach of the Wilbercross boys varsity basketball team. He is also a co-founder of Storytellers New Haven. He serves as a mentor to the youth, a leader amongst many men, and as an advocate for all. We hope you enjoy our program. I will now turn it over to our Omega Uplift Series moderator, Brother Kevin Walton.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Brother Bossless, for that introduction. So welcome to our Uplift Series as we continue to bring these community events. So we're really excited about tonight's program. We have three great panelists. We're going to share some great information about the upcoming elections and the voting process in general. So as for those that don't know, Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day. And now is the time we are preparing to get to the polls to cast our vote to elect new leaders. The midterm election is one of the most important elections in a long time. Nationally, the balance of power is at stake. Currently, the Democrats hold the Senate and the White House. However, the Republicans are making a strong push to take back control of the Senate. Nationally, folks have to decide to cast their vote for critical issues such as Roe versus Wade, affirmative action, as well as the Voting Rights Act. However, far too long, we tend to focus on national elections, and now the turnout depends on who's running on the ballot. For instance, in 2008 and 2012, saw record numbers of Black people turning out in high numbers to elect the first Black president, Barack Obama. And in 2012 and 2016, 2020, record numbers came out to vote for the former president. And while national elections are important, there is an old adage that says all politics are local. So tonight, our panelists will focus on the importance of voting locally, but will also focus on the process as well as the turnout and the importance of being educated around the voting process and being a smart educator voter, as one of our panelists likes to say. So without further delay, let's get started. We are pleased to have with us tonight three community stalwarts who will share their prevailing thoughts with us tonight. So allow me to introduce to some and present to others in the order of presentation: Ms. Karima Mickens Weber, Hamden Town Clerk; Ms. Dory Dumas, Greater New Haven NAACP President; and last, certainly not least, Brother Attorney Michael Jefferson, founder of the Kiyama Movement. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Ms. Mickens Weber.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to gather here to talk about some really important stuff. November 8th is the elections, as Kevin said. It's so important that we are all engaged. And so I'm just happy to be here just to have, share some of my experience. Part of the role of the town clerk is to oversee absentee ballots. So a couple of things I just want to share with you all is, as everyone knows, Census 2020 occurred. That happens every 10 years. And as a result, there has been redistricting. One of the things that I think that everyone should keep in mind is to make sure that you are clear on where your polling locations are. I can tell you in Hamden, that has changed. We have a total of 9 districts, but a lot of our precincts have changed. So you definitely want to be on the lookout for a card. It's this little yellow card that's going to come in the mail, and it's going to tell you where you should go and vote. One of the other things that's really important here is it kind of captures for you who's on the ballot. So on November 8th, you're going to have an opportunity to vote on your governor, lieutenant governor, your US senators, your representatives to Congress, the state senate, the state rep, secretary of state, treasurer, comptroller, attorney general, judge of probate, and register of voters, all within your power to vote for. The other thing I just wanted to call out is that registration, voter registration did end for in-person registration. It usually ends 7 days prior to the election. However, Connecticut is good in that we do have an opportunity for election day registration. So you can go to, for Hamden, I know it's at the Hamden Middle School, that you can go and register to vote in person and vote as well. So, if you haven't had an opportunity to register, you can still do it. The other thing I'd call out as well is the, as part of the elections, 2 things that'll be happening this election cycle is there are 2 questions on the ballot. One being early voting, at least for Hamden, let me say. The election, the piece of it around the early voting is one, and then the second part of it is the charter. So the charter, town charter is like your governing document for Hamden. That's on the ballot this election cycle as well. I think I have lots more to share, but I think my intent was just to give you an overview. In terms of the absentee ballots, you can get an absentee ballot up to November 7th. So I would just tell you, if you're trying to submit it online, it's probably a little late, because what it does, we'll get it like within 24 to 48 hours, but we'll have to mail it to you. So what I suggest is that you go to your town clerks. If you are looking to vote absentee, go to your town clerk's office. You can complete the application and get the ballot real time. You can vote real time, and then we hold on to that ballot until election day. So that's an option. And one of the things that you should be aware of is that the absentee ballot, the reasons for voting absentee was expanded. So if you think back, we had the COVID, was an option for most people. They've expanded it to include sickness. So it broadens it. So if you're nervous about COVID, if there's physical disabilities, if you're working out of town and you're not going to be able to make it to the polls on November 8th, you have an opportunity to vote absentee. Leverage it. I can tell you it's been busy. It's been busy in Hamden. People are using this opportunity to vote absentee. And I think that's it for me. So I'll just hold, if there's questions later, please feel free to let me know what they are and put them in the chat.
All right, Karima, thank you very much. And Karima, thank you for that reminder. So I just want to let everyone in the audience know that we will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions for our panelists, we ask that you put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. We will allow all of our panelists the opportunity to present, and then we'll open the floor for questionings. So again, Karima, thank you very much. And next up, we have Ms. Dory Dumas, the president of the Greater New Haven NAACP.
Good evening. I bring greetings on behalf of the Greater New Haven branch of the NAACP, our officers, and our members. I want to first thank Epsilon Iota chapter of Omega Psi Phi for hosting this very important conversation and your ongoing work with your Omega series. It is something that is needed and respected. So thank you for all the work that you do. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy. Voting is our basic fundamental right. It is our power and our voice. And we need to make sure that we have everyone on this Zoom and in New Haven, Hamden, and surrounding areas in Connecticut, that we do our part to get people out to vote, to make sure that we don't take that power lightly. The goal is that every eligible voter would cast their ballot and every resident would have a voice and use that power. Now, we know that's not the reality, but it is our goal, and we do need each of us to do our part to make sure that we have a higher voter turnout. Voting is what shapes our daily lives. It shapes the laws and policies, and it's what we're governed by. It's how resources are used. It affects every aspect of our lives. The right to vote should never be taken for granted or taken lightly. They did talk and ask me to do a little bit of history, and so I'm going to give you a little bit of history, and then we're going to go into why this election and every election is so important, because we know all politics are local, and everything from local to state to at the national level, it counts and it matters. But despite the fact that African Americans and other racial and ethnic minority Americans were guaranteed the right to vote with the 15th Amendment to the US Constitution, which was passed just after the Civil War in 1870, states and local municipalities continued to use tactics such as poll taxes, literacy tests, outright intimidation to stop people from voting. During the Civil Rights Movement and of the 1960s, in fact, just 5 days after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the march on Selma, the Bloody Sunday, which we all should be aware of, President Lyndon Johnson announced his intention to pass the Federal Voting Rights Act to ensure that no federal, state, or local government may in any way impede people from registering to vote or actually voting. In 1965, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law. However, this day, still in 2022, there are several efforts to block the vote and many barriers to voting for Black and Brown people, and that is very real. There are people throughout the United States who are literally trying to turn back the clock and to take away rights, voting rights, women's rights, you name it. This is happening on our watch, and we all own a piece of this. I can't help but think about the brave men and women of the civil rights movement who fought for decades for the right to vote. We know some of their names, like Fannie Lou Hamer, Diane Nash, and so many others. We stand on the shoulder of countless men and women. What I know for sure is that Black women have always been on the forefront, advocating, organizing, working to address many of the social ills in our communities. Black women have been fighting and organizing to fight against racism, against white supremacy, and the lack of jobs, healthcare, education, housing, voting rights, and so much more. I think it's important for us to just know a little bit of this history, because in September, I participated in the unveiling of the plaque. And this plaque was for women of color who fought for the right to vote. That plaque now is at the state capitol, and it corrected the history. And it's important that the rights, that we make right a lot of the wrongs, and to include details and the people who did this fighting. Their names were omitted, dismissed, overlooked, and excluded from the history books. In 2020, Connecticut joined the nation in commemorating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And this gave the right to vote to women. However, the right did not extend to all women equally. For decades, women of color continued to face exclusion from the ballot, as well as from recognition of their role in wider suffrage movement for women to gain the right to vote. And reflecting on its own organization's history, the board of directors of the League of Women Voters, and I see a few of you on this call tonight, came up with a grant. And my brilliant soror, Dr. Brittany Yancey, was one of the fellowship grant recipients and used it to fund her research and participation with Karen Miller from the Connecticut Historic Society. The League also created a bronze plaque to honor the 29 women that they were able to find the research on and display these names in the Capitol, which originally in 1934, the plaque only listed the names of white women. Two of the women were from New Haven, Mary Jones Taylor and Rachel Baker. Rachel Baker is the mother of the Honorable Constance Baker Motley. Her work was local, particularly and specifically around St. Luke's Church and the NAACP. Now, I say all this because it's important for us to reflect back on history and to realize that we are on their shoulders. They opened up these doors. We owe a debt of gratitude, and we also need to take this seriously because there is so much power in the vote and a lot is riding on the vote. And again, people are trying to turn back the clock. We, with the NAACP, we do voter registration year round. This is who we are. This is what we do. So registering people to vote is one part of it, but we also got to educate people about the power of the vote and how it affects them. I recently did 2 voter registration drives, and the information and lack of information that people have, the misinformation that people have, and the way people feel in our communities. So it's great that we're on this call and a lot of us vote, but if we're not making sure our neighbors and the people who really sometimes don't feel like they have a voice are voting, then we're not doing our job. It's everybody. I'm asking people to do the power of 5. So if each of us can commit to making sure at least 5 people you know for sure will get to the polls, that's something. If you could do more, do more. The Greater New Haven NAACP, we will be having an outreach, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll be doing some canvassing and looking for some volunteers. But you can do it via texting people, calling people, giving rides, offering rides. This is what each of us can do. We also, a lot of people do not know, and Karima talked about it, and AJ, if you want to put it up, there is going to be a question on the ballot. The Greater New Haven NAACP has signed on to this. We are asking people to please vote yes for early voting. That is beneficial to our communities. A lot of people in our communities, and I heard this just 2 days ago at a voter registration, like, I can't get there that early. I work all day. I'm not gonna be able to get up early. By the time I get up, get my kids going, or get where I need to go and get off of work, I'm not gonna be able to vote. With early voting, that gives people the opportunity to exercise their right to vote. That will be on the ballot. Even a lot of people who go vote every year are not aware that this is going to be on the ballot. Here are, you can read some of this and look at some of this, but a lot of it is that it benefits people in our community. How many of you knew that Connecticut is one of 4 states that does not have early voting? I bet a lot of you did not know that. We are supposed to be in a progressive state. We should be a lot further along. However, we are not, and that is a fact. And we need to be aware of that. When we talk about being educated voters, we need to understand what is happening around us. And we are one of 4 states that does not offer it. And it's time that we, bring about a change in that. So we are encouraging people to not just get out to the polls, make sure that you exercise your right. And for those of you who do, please make sure to check yes. This is not the first time that it's been on the ballot, but a lot of it is that people are not aware of some of the laws in Connecticut and some of the restrictions. And this is one of the restrictions. It is a block and a barrier to some people who do not have the luxury to take off extra time or go take a long break and stand in a line to vote, or who don't think they do. But if they had the opportunity to vote early, that would allow them to exercise their right and to use their voice and their power. So we're encouraging this. The other thing the Greater New Haven NAACP has signed on and working on, and AJ, if you can put the other one up, this is something that is long-term, but we want people to be aware that we are working on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act for Connecticut. Again, Connecticut has very restrictive laws around voting, and we are in a progressive state. I wasn't even aware of this until the last couple of years, and I've been voting every year since I turned 18. I don't know that everyone knows all the restrictions. This does prevent people who would like to vote. We don't have a Voting Rights Act. And so we have been working with the NAACP, League of Defense, and the ACLU and different groups to make sure that we let the community know what is going on. We need to be educated about it, for those of us who care enough and are engaged. And for those of us who don't care about it, just think about the people who don't have a voice, who need to, to have people in their districts that are voting for the things they care about. If they know that there's early voting and that more people, and we can increase the numbers of people who are voting, then our representatives are going to pay attention to that. There is power in the vote, and we are encouraging everyone. Yes, we do the voter registration, but we are going to be doing some more work, and we're going to be holding our legislators accountable and making sure they know that we care about early voting and we care about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act for Connecticut. So those are just some of the things we're working on. I think I went on long enough, so I'll stop at this point. But we are encouraging everyone to exercise your right next Tuesday, please. And for those who want to volunteer, we'll talk a little bit about that opportunity that you can volunteer with the NAACP. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for that information, Dory. And again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And so we've had our first two panels. So last and certainly not least is our brother, attorney Michael Jefferson, the founder of the Kiyama movement and Black Men Vote Too. And he's going to talk to us about voter education. And without further ado, we'll turn it over to Brother Jefferson.
Thank you, Brother Walton, and thank you, Brother Boss, Alexander Jones, and Brother Giggy, Chair of the Social Action Committee for Epsilon, Iota. Following protocol, I just want to recognize Brother First Vice DR, Brother Raymond Bailey, welcome. And I see my mentee out there, Brother Baba Jide. I want to thank my co-panelists for their presentation. I think, folks, I hope you heed the words that they have provided this evening. I am going to go over some rules, basically, with the help of Brother Alexander Jones. Brother Jones, would you please post some of the rules on the screen for me? So one of our challenges in the Kiyama movement is not only to register people to vote, but help people become sophisticated voters. A lot of people go to the polls, and this is just how it is in this country. We're not taught how to think. We're told what to think, and we're told what to do. And it's very important because this basically helps to empower you once you become a sophisticated voter. And as we go through the rules, I'm going to elaborate on what I'm talking about in terms of becoming a sophisticated voter. So let's get right to it. Rule number one, you have to be an independent thinker. Malcolm has warned us that if we were not careful, our enemies will have us walking east when we think we're walking west. Most people are told who to vote for. This is why candidates spend enormous amounts of money in a given election cycle because they're basically trying to influence you to vote for them. And so they don't think you're sophisticated. So they will put up ads and they pay enormous amounts of money to secure your vote, hoping that you don't do your homework. And in order to become a sophisticated voter, you have to apply rule number one. You have to be an independent thinker. You have to question and vet properly any candidate that comes before you. Because these folks out here, it costs $600 million to become president of the United States, probably $1 billion now, to become president of the United States. That's an awful lot of money. And that's who they answer to. Those are the people they answer. And they spend that money to trick you, basically, to fool you, to disguise who they are. And if you're not an independent thinker, you'll basically be bamboozled, as Malcolm used to so eloquently talk about. So being an independent thinker, think for yourself. Don't let a friend, don't let a relative tell you who to vote for. Say, fine, let me do my research. Let me find out who this individual is before he or she gets my vote. Go to the next one, rule number 2. I see we have Gary Winfield in the house, and I'm going to reference Gary. So Gary, I want you to hang out on the call here on the Zoom line, because I'm gonna say a few words about Gary, and in order to make a point. Rule number 2 is all that glitters isn't gold. You know, folks like to, you know, we live in a celebrity type society where, you know, folks love celebrities, basically, and folks love entertainment and entertainers and those who have name recognition, so to speak. So it's celebrity driven. And if we're not careful, we think, oh, because this person is glittering, this is the one. And we saw what that leads to. I don't have to talk about that. We just got to go back a few years. We saw what that led to. It can lead to disaster. This is why you can't, simply because a person has name recognition, or you know this person, or this person's been in power forever, doesn't mean that person is best for our community. You have to vet that person. You have to ask the right questions. Let me see the editorials that you have written. Who's backing you? Who's giving you money? What issues have you stood for? And what issues have you opposed? These are the real questions that you got to ask. Simply because someone has a name like, oh, I heard that person, I heard about her, or I heard about him, that doesn't mean anything. They could be fooling you. And most of the time they are. This is why don't fall for the glitter. All that glitter isn't gold. Know that. Let's go to rule number 3. Know the rules of the game. Can you write in a candidate? On the ballot, you can write in a candidate. What are the rules governing convicted felons? And when we get to the end, I'm going to give you a link that you can go to that describes the rule in every state concerning convicted felons. But do I live, or do you live in a battleground state? Do you live in a purple state? Because that will matter. If you live in a purple state, if you in a state that could possibly go red or possibly go blue, you have to know these things. And that will determine how you might vote. Because sometimes you might have to hold your nose and go to the poll. In other words, vote for somebody you really don't like, but you don't want that state turning red, or if you are red, you don't want it turning blue. So you have to know, you know, where do I live? What are the rules of the game? Can I be a Democrat? Can I vote in the Democratic primary and then switch over and vote in the Republican primary? How much time do I have before I can switch parties? Can I vote as an independent in a Democratic primary or in a Republican primary? You have to know the rules of the game. Next. Know the existing power structure. Know who your representatives are. Folks don't even know who their representatives are. They don't know their state reps. They don't know their senators, their state senators. And as Dory and Karima and Kevin all acknowledge, politics is local. But you got to know, the existing power structure and how to play that power structure. For example, let me give you an example. You might have someone, Gary Winfield is a very effective state senator, very, very effective in moving legislation through the Senate. I would know because I sit there and I watch him as clerk of the Senate when the Senate's in session. Now, and he serves as the chair of the powerful Judiciary Committee. There are very powerful committees in our legislature, right? And judiciary, they cover basically the judges, the prosecutors, everything to do with the criminal justice system in particular, and a lot more. But that's a very powerful committee. And you get to that committee, you become a committee chair based on your seniority. So now let's just say someone decides to run against Gary. What people don't recognize is this. If you elect that person and remove Gary, that person who you now put in power goes to the bottom of the food chain, right? They might get the committee on aging, no disrespect to the committee on aging, but they might get some committee that's not judiciary, that's not appropriations. These are powerful committees in the legislature. So you have to know, it's not that easy, remove him because I don't like him. If he's effective, if she's effective, you got to understand what committee assignments do this individual have? Because if you knock them out, you're probably cutting off your nose to spite your face and you don't even know it. So folks got to understand who your representatives are, what committees they sit on, what legislation they influence. That's very, very important. I see it every election year and I'm wondering, why is someone challenging this individual? This individual should not be challenged. And people don't know. They simply see a new name on the ballot and they're like, I'm going to give this person a chance. Yeah, you're going to give that person a chance. You're going to knock off the person who represents you, who's head of the Appropriations Committee, who controls the purse strings of the state of Connecticut, or who controls judiciary, who becomes a judge, police accountability. You're going to knock that person off in support of someone you don't even know or someone who came knocking on your door. You haven't done your homework. And this is the problem with our people. We don't do our homework. We don't vet. You go into any barbershop and you talk to some of these guys, they can tell you about the latest trade. They can tell you about the NBA trade deadline. They can tell you about the NFL trade deadline. They can tell you why general manager screwed up. They can tell you the cap on certain teams. No, he can't make that trade. The cap it'll be over the cap, yada, yada, yada. Very sophisticated stuff. Trust me, it's very sophisticated, but they know it. And if you know that stuff, then you can learn this stuff. It's not even as complicated, quite frankly. So we have to know the existing power structure and we have to know how to play the game here because politics is our lives. Let's go to the next one. So study each candidate's track record. We don't do a good job at that. We just don't. We just sit up there and we just listen to people tell us some nonsense. Every time you turn around, they're telling us some crapola that, and we don't know any better because we haven't done our homework. We don't know the voting record, and you can find that voting record out. That's easy. That's a click. If you care enough, find out the candidate's track record. And if the person has not held office, just go to the archives. Read the editorials. Read what this person may have supported in the past. Understand who you're voting for. Remember what Malcolm said, if you're not careful, they'll have you loving your enemies and hating your friends. Only because we don't do our homework. That's all it is. We do not do our homework. And this is not our community. It's all community. Simply don't, we can least afford it, but it's real. We don't do our homework. We do our homework for other things. Our favorite television show, our favorite sports team. We do our homework for that, but we don't do our homework where it counts. Let's go to the next one. Beware of, this is rule 6, beware of professional political hacks. There are people coming in your neighborhood, you ask them, you know, who are you? And they're just handing out leaflets, or I'm just working for so-and-so. You know, and I suggest you vote for them. Really? Do you live in the neighborhood? Do you live in the city? Do you live in the state? No, they're just there because they're getting paid. They're hacks. They don't care who wins. They just want to get paid. And hopefully if their candidate wins, they get a job. That's all they care about. You got to know who are the real, who are the mercenaries and who are the real supporters of these individuals, who really know the candidate, who can really tell you about this person who's running for office. You have to beware of political hacks. They are out there, and they're in every facet of the political process. They can be journalists. They can be radio talk show hosts. They can be anyone there. But trust me, they're not working in your interest. They're working in their own interest. Beware of professional political hacks. They are out there. Let's go to rule number 7. So don't be, this is a big one for us all. Don't be consumed by identity politics. Oh, somebody, oh, he's black, he's good for us, or she's good for us. Yeah, really? Really? I mean, we should be beyond that right about now. You know, or they share, they have a shared religion, you know, a shared gender, or whatever the case may be. Really? You want the best person you can have representing you. That's what you have. That's what you want. Just because someone looks like you or you know, have a shared religion or a shared gender does not mean that person is good for you. They'll get in there and flip that script. In fact, they use the identity politics to sucker you into supporting them. They really don't have your best interests at heart. They have their own agenda. Don't get caught up in, that's a prerequisite. Let's, at best, that's a prerequisite. Okay, you look like me. All right, I'll give you that. That's a prerequisite. Tell me something more. Tell me something more. Oh, we share the same sexual orientation. Tell me a little bit more. I hear you. I get it. Yeah, tell me a little more. And tell me a little more after that. And after that. You got to go hard. Do not be consumed by identity politics. That's the worst thing we can do. The absolute worst. I want the best people representing me and mine. Let's go to rule number 8. Oh, this is a whopper. Beware of the candidates with a gift of gab. There are so many folks out there, boy, they talk that vote right out of your pocket. They're good. They're just gifted. They have the gift of gab. And they're lying. They're lying to you. But they know how to talk to you. They know exactly what to say. They know what buttons to push, and they are good. They are very smooth talking. They know the handshake. They know everything. They know exactly how to play it. Now, are you a sucker in terms of, do you simply take them at their word? Do you know, because they say the sweetest sound to a person's ear is the sound of his or her name. So they'll be in the, you know, on the microphone and they'll just mention your name. He's like, oh, he mentioned my name, or she mentioned my name, and they got your vote. Meanwhile, they don't give a crap about you. They just don't. But they know they're smooth talking, and they use that gift to get your support. And that's cool if they're good for you, but if they're no good for you, you better understand that. So do not become, don't sit up there and because a person has command of the English language, that makes that person good for you. It doesn't. We've seen that all too often. It does not make you that person good for you. That means that person just simply has the gift of gab. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Dig deep. Next slide. Beware of the existing political structure. You know, someone had mentioned the national politics. Let me tell you something about national politics. You know, if you ever go to Madison Square Garden, it has a full house every night. The reason why it has a full house every night is because it's corporate owned. The corporations buy out the tickets and ordinary fans just get what's left over, right? At the national level, the corporations own the government, basically. It's just owned by Wall Street and the corporation. Most of those individuals at that level, they spend most of their time, more than half, I'm sure, making phone calls to political donors to get elected for the next election cycle. That's how it works. Senators get 6-year term, House members get 2-year terms. All houses are up for grabs, all 435 this year, and I believe 33 Senate seats are up for grab. Right? And these people answer to the big money people. That's who run our national government. Make no mistake about it, they do not answer to us. Anyone who believes that, I got a bridge to sell you. They answer to the big money people, big money people. Like I told you, it takes 600 million, probably more now, probably $1 billion to become president of the United States. You can imagine what it costs to become senator of a given state. Millions of dollars. It's a millionaires club, basically, the Senate. And basically the House is too, for the most part. It's a millionaires club, you know. So the national political structure is in the hands of the corporations. Now, you can make a difference at the state and local level. This is what the folks were talking about previously, my co-panelists, and Kevin Walton was talking about politics is local, because it is. You can make an impact. You can make a difference at the local level. And this is why you have to get involved. There are thousands of people, thanks to organizations like the NAACP and other organizations that have been out there registering people for years. So we have many registered voters all across this state, you know, millions of registered voters. We just don't come out. In a given election, you'll find, and this is not just Connecticut, you know, it's 30% across the board. That's about it. You know, you'll see those rare instances where you have about 60%. That's rare to come out, but it's basically in some wards, quite frankly, in New Haven, you might have, and this is, I'm not even embellishing, you might have 15% turnout, 15% turnout, 22% turnout in the ward. So other people are basically voting, making a choice for you in those elections. When you can make a difference, because local politics control education, controls taxes, controls the police, criminal justice at the state level. That's what matters. And you have to be aware of this. Local and state politics matter, and they matter a lot. Let's go to the last rule. Rule number 10 is basically what I've been saying and what this panel is all about. Be active participant in the process. You can't abdicate your role, your civic duty, simply because you feel like it. That makes no sense. And you can't complain. The first time when people start complaining to me, do you vote? Because if you don't vote, there's no reason to complain. What are you complaining for? You don't even vote. Oh, I don't believe in the system. Well, I don't. What do you want me to say about that? How is that going to change? We think something magically is going to happen, I think, in our community, that, oh, something. No, that's not how it works. Look, during slavery, they kept 2 things from us, even after slavery: education and the right to vote. Those are the 2 things they held on to dearly during slavery. Education, that was forbidden. And the right to vote wasn't even questioned. And after slavery, where we started opening up our own schools, so they couldn't stop that. Just kept us segregated, but they kept a lock on the vote. You know, came up with the poll tax and all kinds of crap until the 1965 Voting Rights Act passed on August 6, 1965, which was probably one of the greatest pieces of legislation passed in modern history. And they're trying to gut that now, because now basically they're saying, you know, before anybody can make changes to their voting laws. They have to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department. They gutted that back in, I believe it was 2013. So they gutted that part of the Voting Rights Act. And so they're going after more too. So they're going to roll it all back. This is what Dory was talking about. These people are out for they mean business. They really mean business. So you have to be an active participant in the process. Now, let's go to some resources here. AJ, let's go down. Go down a little bit more, sir. Go down. Scroll down. Let's go to the first one. Click here. Yeah, right there. Vellons. Just go to the click right there. All right, scroll down. Scroll down. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. There you go. So right there. I want to be right there. There you go. So look at Connecticut. So it's a list of all the states and what the states allow in terms of voting for convicted felons. So Connecticut, you don't have the right to vote only while incarcerated. It's automatic restoration after release. So whether you're on probation or parole, you can vote. And and that's a list of and it has a list for all the states. You can see some of these states are still in the last century. But go back, AJ, go back to the resource page, if you will. There you go. Click there. Let's see what we got right there. Okay, so go to Connecticut. Let me see what we got. All right, and go to Hamden, Kareemstown. Go all the way down to Hamden. Scroll down. Scroll down. Scroll down. All right, go back up. All right, so, and you click here for election news. So on this site, you can find any town in Connecticut or any municipality or town in the United States, and they'll give you some information about voting. And keep going down, scroll down. So it tells you on this particular site, it tells you if you live in a certain district, you're moving too fast, big bro. Right there. Yeah. So if you live in a certain district, it tells you exactly where your polling place is. So Hamden did a very good job with their site and their election news. So everything's it's a click away if folks just take the time and do your research and take voting and take the electoral process very, very seriously. This is life or death. I mean, that's why these people are going hard. They're going hard. I mean, the whole democracy is at stake, really. If those folks get in down there in the midterms, we're looking at a disaster if the wrong people get in. Yeah. I mean, it's a disaster. Trust me. You might even have the end of the republic as we know it. And I'm not embellishing. I'm telling you. So we have to really get out there and do what we have to do. So with that, AJ, that's my presentation on a guide to becoming a sophisticated voter. And I am prepared to entertain whatever questions that you might have. And one last thing, I want to dedicate my presentation to our late frat brother Kevin Moses, who left us late this past September. And I'm sure this is something that he would embrace enthusiastically. So I want to remember him, and I want all of you to keep his family in prayer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brother Jefferson. And thank you for sharing all of that great information. And thank you for all the work that you do with the Kiyama movement and trying to get folks out there to the polls and become sophisticated voters. So with that, we can open the floor for questions. You can drop your questions in the chat. Right now we have a couple of things in the chat. And I think AJ, Brother Bossless, and Brother Ruel Dixon will be monitoring the chat. But I do have a couple of questions so we can get us started while people start getting some questions. Mike, when you talk about well, this is for anyone, I think all three actually, because I know we've mentioned it several times. We talked about all politics being local. What exactly does that mean? And bear with me for a second. So I go out and I cast my vote for my alderman or for my mayor. Let's stay with the mayor first. And my candidate wins. What have we elected that mayor to do?
Dory, did you want to take it or you want me?
You can start. I'll
Sure.
jump in.
So I mean, local politics, I mean, that governs your taxes. It governs your taxes, it governs your education, and it governs the police, right? So police, education, taxes, housing, it governs a lot on a local level. So the person you select, now take New Haven, for example. New Haven is the mayor, it's a strong mayor system. In other words, the mayor has a lot of appointment power in the city of New Haven. So that individual is responsible for selecting members to the Board of Education, which is rare because most towns, the city administration and the Board of Ed are two distinct entities. But in New Haven, it's hybrid, right? So two people run to sit on the board, but the mayor gets to select most of the seats on the board. That's a powerful, powerful position. So you got to understand who you're electing mayor of your town. The mayor also gets to select the police chief, the fire chief, right? Of course, they have to go through the aldermanic process, but if you're the strong mayor, you're probably going to get what you want. They help to determine the taxes, the budget, who's getting what. I mean, that's a powerful position. The housing, affordable housing, what deals are coming in the city, what developers want to develop here or there, and how many units of affordable housing will be available. That's why you have to be careful as to who you select as your mayor. It's not, oh, I know that person's been cool with me. No, that's crapola. Look at that person's track record. Tell me, what have you done? Tell me how do we connect with each other and with my community? That's the questions we have to ask. You got to seriously vet these individuals. And here's the other thing, Kevin, which is because I think it's a very important. Do you have access to that person? Do you have access? Do you know? Do you know? Can you pick up the phone and call him? Because some people are like, I don't know. Look, go through my secretary, take his name, we'll get back to you. That crap. You want to be able to pick up that phone and say, man, look here, I got a problem here. Not on some BS, but on some real talk. So do you have access to an individual? That's a very critical and important piece when you talk at the local level. I'll let somebody else chime in.
I think you covered it. And when you think about your day-to-day, the things you care about, the schools that your children go to, what your education looks like, what your streets look like, your parks look like, are they pouring into your community to uplift your community? The things that you vote for a mayor for are all the things that Mike listed. And a lot of people don't realize that is where it starts, because that's where you're living. That's in your backyard. So that's why we always say, and that's how I started, all politics are local. And if it's affecting you or not affecting you, or things you want to see or not see, then that's where you need to raise your voice and either vote for that person or vote them out, and make sure that they're representing the things that you care about in your community, where you live, where you reside. And so it starts there, but every election is important. Some people, especially midterms, don't turn out as much. And I mean, I feel like we need to emphasize not just presidential elections. Some people only will wait for that. No, every year, because you're voting for those people who are running your city, your town, and you need to make sure that they have the things that represent the things you care about and are voting for the things you care about. And when they're not, you need to be showing up at those meetings and making sure to hold them accountable. And that's more for the sophisticated voter and some of the people that are more engaged. But for the people, you know, and I'm speaking to some of the young people when we did a voter registration, I tried to tell them about voting. Look at the things you care about. You're here at school. Do you have loans? Do you have things that are holding you back? Do you want a job? Do you want opportunity for training and access? That is why you should be voting, because those things people have control of when they are running. They're your representative at the local, the state, or at the national level. So, I mean, sometimes you have to just make it real clear and basic for people. For the people on this call probably would fall in line with more of the sophisticated voter. But I'm talking about the people who don't have a voice, who don't realize they have a voice, who don't use their voice or their power. Those are the people that I'm trying to target when we talk about the NAACP and the grassroots, and why we want to get out there knocking on doors, because we on this call will show up on the 8th. But you got to just make sure everybody understands that power. And like you said, that's why they're trying to turn back the clock and block the vote, because of that power. And so when we tell them, and if they don't get it, you have to relate it to things they care about. And that's when we're registering people to vote. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
I'll
you.
just add, I'll just add, I think they pretty much covered it. And when I think about the mayor, you know, they're pretty much steering the vision of your neighborhoods or your community for the next whatever years, right? So they're laying that foundation. I think one of the real life examples that's happening right now, that I think we all can relate to in the midst of after COVID, is ARPA dollars, right? All that money that we receive from the feds that are now in our towns and our cities. How is that money going to be used, right? Who's leading that ship that's going to make sure that the people that were hurt the most are the people that are going to receive the most, or that they're, you know, they have a seat at the table and a say in how that funding is going to be used. So I think it's just so important to make sure, you know, that you are educated and knowledgeable about who you cast your vote for, because especially when it comes to local politics, because that's what you're really going to feel. That's the stuff you see every day.
Great, thank you. And Kareem, I'll stay with you, because my question for you is, I think you're one of, I know Mike mentioned Gary Winfield was on the call, and thank you, Gary, for your service, right? And I'm not sure if you have any other elected officials on the call. However, I know you were elected to your position. And so first of all, I want to say, when anyone jumps out there to throw their hat in the ring to run, it's courageous, because, you know, you go through so many different things. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And my question to you is, so what, as a town clerk, what are your jobs and what's your responsibility?
So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And it's funny how it all comes full circle in terms of how I got here. You know, 2 years ago, part of Ellis Fund PAC, a brainchild of your wife, and she brought it to me, and getting into local politics and start stirring, and the opportunity presented itself, and here, you know, 2 years later, I'm in the role. When I think of the role of the town clerk, which most people don't have no clue what we do, and even when I ran for it and I researched it, I had no real, you know, it's bigger than what I thought it was. But we deal with, like, as I've mentioned before, one component is the elections. We're responsible for the absentee ballots. We're responsible for creating the ballots, designing the ballots. We're responsible for, we're the register of vitals. So that's like all of your birth certificates, your death certificates, your marriages. So it's like, we really see the full person, right? Anybody who lives in the town of Hampden, the town clerk touches you in some way. Whether it's when people purchase buildings, sell homes, like any transaction of real estate occurs in that office. We do your trade names. It's a plethora of things that happens in the office. And for the town clerk position, for our town, it's elected, but in some towns, it's appointed. So it's something that you have to do every 2 years. So, that'll be coming up in another year. And you have to be certified, right? So there's a lot of training that you have to take, and it's like, over 2+ years before you're even certified, and it's very detailed. So you're also, like, I think of my bosses as mini bosses, right? So I have the federal piece, I have the state piece, and I have the local piece of it, right? So a lot of statutes. I always joke, it's like I say 22 + 5 - 7. I can't remember them all, but the good thing is we have resources to to remember all the different statutes. But it's I'm enjoying it. We did a primary. This is my first election. So it's great. I'm enjoying it.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for sharing, and continued success in that role. We do have a question in the chat, so I'll turn it over to I think we have 2 questions, so I'll turn it over to Brother AJ.
Thank you, Brother Moderator. The first question was to Brother Jefferson. Can you talk about the importance of reading and knowing how to vote on local referendums?
Yeah, I think they've done a not so credible a job, at least throughout the state, in notifying people about this particular referendum that's out now, early voting, because on Saturday, we're going to try to help that cause. Black Men Vote 2 will be down at 200 Orange Street at 10 o'clock in the morning, passing out information about that particular referendum to cast your vote for early voting, because Connecticut is, I think, one of 4 states that does not have early voting. Every other state basically has early voting for reasons that President Dumas had discussed earlier. But because people need to be able to vote, and they can't make it on a given day. So, but now in Connecticut, and Karima could correct me if I'm wrong, now you can fill out an application and receive an absentee ballot and vote by absentee ballot, but that's the extent of our early voting process. So referendums, I mean, people have to get the information out there, and people have to know what the questions are, if there are questions or if there is a question. And I got to tell you, that's just very, very difficult, because some people don't know there's a question on the ballot until they show up. And then they like, oh, there's a question on the ballot, and they come out of the poll and say, there was a question on the ballot, I didn't even see it. You know what I mean? So I think part of the becoming a sophisticated voter is asking someone for a copy of the ballot. Let me see a copy of the ballot. Let me know what's on this ballot. That's our job as citizens, because you got to think, if people don't want you to vote for that question in the affirmative, why would they even let you know that it's on the ballot? You see? So a lot of it comes really down to us, AJ, us doing our homework. And unfortunately, it falls on groups like the NAACP, it falls on groups like Black Men Vote 2 to do our due diligence to get the word out there. But I think it's incumbent upon individuals to do our homework and to learn more about it, just like we would anything else. Anything else you want to find out, you go right online, you start hitting Google, and you start the research right there. We do it all the time for so many different things. We want to know when Wakanda's coming out or whatever movies out there. You go on that Google, you Google where is it playing, yada, yada, yada. You go through the research, you go through the process. That's what we do. And we need to do the same thing when it comes to voting. I don't know if I answered the question, but I tried.
No, I think you answered the question. And I know AJ has a couple more questions, but I just want to respond to something you said, Mike, in terms of the distrust, right? And you talk about disenfranchisement. I'm going to ask Dory to respond to a question later, but that simple thing like that is, if you're not a sophisticated voter, is the type of thing I might think might turn people off, right? Like there's this huge referendum that has huge implications and we don't know about it, right? Until we get into the poll, and that plays along into that. And I'm going to ask Dory to speak on it a little bit later. But AJ, I think Gary has something, but you have another question for our panelists, correct?
Sorry, yes, Gary had actually brought up a good point. If I could just read for those who don't have the chat, one of the reasons to pay attention early to early ballot is that questions are often written in complicated ways, and walking in and reading them cold doesn't always work. The questions on the ballot has been simplified purposely, but last time the same question was difficult to decipher.
Excellent point. He's
Yes.
right.
And he is right. And a lot of people, especially even people that vote every year, they were not aware that that was going to even be on there. And people have mistrust and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure about it. So I'm just going to vote no. But I think that we know it benefits the people in our community, which is why we are encouraging people to vote yes, because we know, and I know this, and many of you who do voter registration or who work in a certain population, there's so many people who are already intimidated by voting or what's going on, and then now you have extra questions. They don't know that. So it's important that we talk to people, that we go to people in our community, and that we share information and make sure they understand why it's important. I heard way too many times people talking about they can't get out there to vote, and so this is going to be something that's helpful. So it's something that's helpful, and it's something that affects mostly Black and brown people. And when you look, and they've taken polls and surveys to kind of figure out how people feel about it, majority of the people that are of color say, yes, I would vote if I had the opportunity to do early voting. I would vote more often. So I'm not talking about the person who shows up every year anyway. I'm talking about the people who just don't have that kind of luxury to take time off or to make it happen one day. So that's why we're encouraging it. And we want to make sure that people know about it so that, once when they show up to the poll, that they're already ready to vote yes, and not, I think the last time people were surprised by it. I'm hoping that this time, those that are doing the works, like the NAACP and others, are doing a better job with spreading the information and making sure people understand that, yes, it's on the ballot. Yes, we're encouraging it because it benefits our community.
So Dory, so when we say the people who, well, how do you respond to it if I say the people who didn't want to vote for it got exactly what they wanted, right? Because we're focusing on the people who don't know or weren't prepared, but there's also a group out there that did not want early voting. So
like Mike said, those are the ones that are making sure you don't hear about it, that you don't know about it. They're trying to hide the information, or when they put it on the last time, make it so difficult you don't understand what you're voting for, just like Gary said. So they simplified it. So yeah, you had just the same thing where the people who bank, and I was sharing this with a couple of people I was trying to register the other day. People are banking on certain people not showing up to the polls, not caring enough, not understanding. So the people who don't want you to vote are the people who are not in your community, knocking on your doors, putting stuff out, running ads there, because they don't want you to turn out. They know that power. They know that vote is your voice. And so they don't care if you vote. So we're talking to the people, we're making sure everybody understands that power, and each of us hold that power. And again, voting is the cornerstone of our democracy. It's where everything matters, because everything that we vote for, it affects each of us and has every aspect of our lives touched by the vote. So it's our job to keep making sure that not just we turn out, not just our household, but that we reach out and we have your cousins, your nephews, your nieces, your aunties, people that may not. I'm asking everybody to just do the power of 5 and don't make it easy for yourself. Now, if the person's going to turn out every day, that's not the 5 we want you to count. We want to make sure that your neighbors or your nieces, nephews, cousins, whoever, that they're voting too.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Brother AJ, you want to ask, I believe it's Bilal say Q's question?
Yes. So this is a 2-part question. Can anyone discuss efforts to register and turn out to vote people convicted of a felony, but on probation or parole, but are eligible to vote? And then similarly, what efforts are being made to turn out young people?
Yeah, we shared that information. If you want to go back to that screen, AJ, it's up there where it doesn't matter in Connecticut. Connecticut,
right.
If you're If you're not in prison, you can vote, basically. So that's now as far as young people, we do what we have to do. You know, we're out there, we're in young people, but you know, young people for the most part have become very disillusioned with the process. And you know, they mimic adults. Adults have become disillusioned with the process, unfortunately. So I think it's incumbent upon adults to really basically demonstrate for young people the importance of voting, and because they're going to follow older folks, they're going to follow adults. And I just think when you have only 20% of the adults in your neighborhood going out to vote, folks don't think it's that important. You have people right in the household saying, I'm not voting. So what do you think a kid's going to say? They're not voting. If you look at households that vote, kids are probably voting. If you look at the households where folks aren't voting, the kids probably not voting. That's just how it is. So, you know, young people, it's about parents doing what they have to do. Go ahead and click there, AJ. So this is Connecticut, right? So you're lost only while you're incarcerated. It's automatic restoration after you're released in Connecticut. Those are the states: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, so on and so forth. You know, so.
All right.
And the first column is the best column. Obviously, they never lose the right to vote in District of Columbia, Maine, or Vermont. But Connecticut is right there. It's probably one of the most liberal states when it comes to voting, except for this early voting. And that's why we have to do our best because they're afraid of the cities. Basically, that's what it is. You know, it's that fear of the cities. If the cities get early voting, I mean, then you're going to increase that turnout.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean? So, yeah. So it's important because people are voting against it. It's not the first time it was on the ballot. It's it lost the last time it was on the ballot. So we have to get out there and do our due diligence. But I want to say that again. I want to emphasize that young people mimic adults. Everyone always talk about young people. Young people are just looking at adults. That's it. That's what they do. And they mimic adults. If they see adults going out and taking voting seriously, they will most likely take voting seriously, particularly individuals from that household. But if you're in that household talking that nonsense, talking about, no, they don't, screw that. That's not where it's at. I'm not wasting my time. Kids gonna, they're just gonna naturally, adopt the same position.
I definitely feel like some of the things we have done that we've had success on and we're going to do more of is this week we went to Gateway Community College, and it's not just young people because it's really people of all ages that attend, but we got a lot of young people. And it was disheartening to hear some of the responses of the young people. But I think having conversations with us, a few of them said, because you took the time to talk to me, you know what, I am gonna vote, because they're talking about they don't care, nobody cares about us, it doesn't matter. Things that you used to hear way back when, we're starting to hear again. We also need to go into the high schools. I think sometimes the young people can lead the house. If you educate and they buy into it, a young person believes it or understands it or can relate to it, then they're more likely to get out there to vote. So, we need to be places they are, and we also need to get more young people to help with the voter registration, because a lot of times they see us, or people a certain age, they're like, oh, that's my mother's age or whatever. But if they see people that look like them that are actually talking about it as well. So I think we need to do more engagement and education and include some of the young people who get it, who care enough so that they can see people that look like them in their age group. And we're talking about canceling debt and they're going to be wanting jobs and they're going to need healthcare and they're going to be wanting to buy a house at some point. And sometimes you just got to break it down to everyday things they care about, at their schools, so, getting services that they think are important, and then perhaps they'll buy into how important it is. So when it comes to young people, it's a struggle, but I'm gonna just say young people, because the lack of knowledge for some of the people in our communities, and and it's not just young people, some of the responses we got, it was a little shocking. And I think that we need to do a lot more around basic education of voting and why it's important and that power of that vote. And I think, yes, we need that conversation around sophisticated voters and realizing it, but we also need just for everyday people so that they can turn out and understand their voice matters as well.
And I just wanted to add real quickly that one of the things that I've noticed, and it's not statistically valid, but the state put up this year the online absentee ballot platform. And so what this did is that it made it so that you didn't have to go into the town clerk's office, or you didn't have to download the ballot and mail it. So they had it where you can go in and just online and you can just submit your ballot, and within 24 hours we get it. And it made my heart full when I saw that a lot of the college students were leveraging it, the technology. So you'd see that they were submitting these applications. They were Hampden residents, of course, but they were going away to school. So I think making the ballot more accessible to our young folks, and the technology, the ways that they can get to it, is definitely a plus. And I can tell you, at least anecdotally from what I've seen, it's been great for some of our younger folks.
Yeah, before we get to and thank you all for your responses. And before I get to the next question, you know, as I was getting ready for work the other day, I was watching A Different World, and it was an episode that featured Reverend Jesse Jackson. And one of the things he said in the episode is that high school students should leave high school with a diploma and a voter registration card.
Absolutely.
And that was back in 1989 that he was talking about that. So that was right on time. AJ, we have a couple more questions.
Yes. The next question, I'll start with Karima. And then we can open up to the other panelists as well. Would you discuss the ideas for building the pipeline of the next generation of political leaders in the Black community?
So I would say more conversations like these. I think informing folks of how they can be informed voters. I can tell you organizations like Ella's Fun Pack, which is about getting out education about voting. One of the other things is just making sure, one of the things for people to get out there, like myself, is money. I'm sorry, but it is like, being able to help endorse and support our candidates, right? Like, if we believe in people, we see, I always think of a lot of the people in this room and in the spaces that I go to are just dope. Like, they're leading in the churches, they're leading, and whether it's the class, in high school or what, they're leaders. They're just natural born leaders that are able to galvanize, and they're making moves and making changes. And to me, it's like taking those skill sets, right, where you see people shining in different spaces, and applying them in these larger political spaces, and giving them the resources, right, to support them so that they could be productive and, get things done. So I believe conversations like this, organizations that could support it, work that the NAACP does, we just need to continue to do more of this, providing people access, letting them know that the skills that they use every single day are the skills that you can use in these spaces. I think the more I got into, I wasn't new to social action. I've been doing it my entire life. I think once we got into, doing the Ellis Fun Pack, and, me being closer to some of the leaders, I'm like, I can do this. I do this. Like, this can be done, right? And just showing people and supporting them. I think that's key.
Thank you. Thank you, Karima. Anyone else want to respond to that?
I think she said it all. It is about people having the courage to step out. You don't like what's happening. You want to be involved. You want to run for office. You want to get out there. And then those that have the courage, they're going to need like Karima says, support, helping them not financially, knock on doors, getting the word out. Like, it's a lot of work to it. But we say we want to see more people in these positions that look like us and care about the issues that we care about. But then if someone's running and we're not supporting, then we're not helping move things forward. So it's all about, one, having the courage to get out there, caring enough. It is hard work. And even if you are elected, it's even harder, and people, come at you every which way. But that's the only way that we can get it done, is that we support people, and that when they are running, that, every little bit helps. So even if people can't give a lot, if you give a little, and each of us understand financially they need to support, they also need us out there knocking on doors, for whichever candidate you care about. If you think that they're going to care about your issues and the things that affect your day to day, you have to support them. And I'd love to see more people, being brave enough and having the courage to step out and give it a try, win, lose, whatever. But I think that we need to see more people of color being engaged at that level as well.
I'll throw my 2 cents in there. My thing is not only the courage to step out, the courage to hang in. It's that's the concern for me. Is like, are you going to compromise yourself? I've told several people, before they ran, I said, you and I won't be friends after, you serve for about a year, because, half these people out here, these politicians, are kissing babies and stealing their lollipops. It's just, they're getting in there and they're selling out, and you cannot sell out. You got to hold strong. You got to be your own person. And sometimes it becomes this sense of celebrity, this sense of, I want to stay here because people call me this or that, but if you're not doing right by the community, you need to step down. That takes courage too. It's
That's
like
right.
People go to counseling because, to leave something, you know what I mean? And not only just to keep it together, but to leave. Sometimes you got to go in, you got to have the courage to say, I'm not cut out for this. This isn't my shtick, because this is causing me to compromise myself. I need to step out of here because I'm not doing a good job for my people. And that's just the bottom line.
Mike, I would say, even if they don't have the courage, if we feel like they have their own agenda, they're only looking out for certain people, or they're afraid, no matter who they are, then we need to vote them out as well. So I think that matters.
Mike talked about corporations owning national politics, in particular the presidency. I had the privilege and honor to ride shotgun for 2 elections the past 2 years. And I learned a hard lesson about machine politics right here in the city and in the state. Please talk about how machine politics impacts local and statewide races.
Oh, machine politics, machines calling the shots, They control the votes. They control the nomination process. That's where it all begins. They control the nomination process. So they get on the phone and they make the phone calls and they control nominations. Now, that's how the machine works. So the machine, whether it's the Democratic Party or Republican Party, they have their conventions and they control the delegates, or they control to the conventions, which allows somebody to get on the ballot at the top of the line. Now, if you do not get that nomination, that's where folks have to have the troops in order to go out there and get those signatures. You understand? And getting signatures is very, very, very difficult, because you got to get a percentage of the signatures of the registered individuals from that party in order to qualify on the ballot. And if the machine doesn't like you, they can sit there and try to knock you off the ballot by looking at those signatures and see if those signatures are valid or not. So you have to have an operation in place in order to get on the ballot if you're not in favor with the machine. So the machine politics is real. It's always been real in New Haven politics, is real in all the big cities. I'm not sure about the towns and whatever have you. I suspect it's the same deal, but it's a reality of everyday politics. And that's why you have to have your own individual base when you decide to run for political office. You have to have your base. Folks talked about money. Money matters. You have to have, avenue where you can raise that money, raise the cheddar, because it costs a lot. I mean, you got to run a campaign headquarters. You got to buy the signs. You got to pay people. You got to pay people to knock on doors. You got to pay people. You got to have a pullout operation. on the day of the election. You gotta have people riding around in cars, giving people lifts. You gotta buy people food. I mean, it's a process.
You gotta have
politics is real.
You gotta have jobs and committee seats too to hand out to people.
Oh man, I mean, you gotta make the, folks are making all kinds of promises. But that's machine politics, and I've been around politics for many, many years. I know exactly how it's played.
Absolutely. Okay. So listen, so I'm gonna do this because we're headed towards the end and we have a couple of things we need to get done. So I'd ask if the panelists could give us an extra 5 minutes because we want you to talk about your events that you have coming up, and we want to get to as many questions. We have a couple more questions, so I would ask this. AJ will ask the questions, and we'll direct them towards one candidate, one panelist, and we'll move it like that. So that means so we can at least give our audience the opportunity to be heard.
Gotcha. All right, this next question is for Dory. Can you explain the role of that the NAACP plays on election day and after the elections, and also how would one person become a member?
Okay, so we would love, every person should be a member. If you're not, it's only $30 a year. Nobody, no organization has dues that low. So all you have to do is go to NAACP.org, hit membership. Please become a member. Members are the lifeblood of the NAACP, and we need more members, support, and help. We never have enough. And it's hard work being a part of the NAACP, but you can be a member, and that is support. So that helps. So again, NAACP.org. Put in New Haven. Our branch number is 2009, but you don't even need all of that. If you say you're from New Haven, they'll automatically credit you to us. Also, we're in the community a lot, and we always have voter registration cards and membership cards. Voter registration, we do year round. We don't just wait for the election. We do it at fairs, at concerts, at community events. We collaborate with churches. We collaborate with other, the D9 and other groups. So that's something we are committed to. That is who we are. That is really the foundation of the NAACP, is registering people, educating them, and then mobilizing them to actually utilize their right to vote. So please do that. Become a member, get involved. Again, a lot of our efforts are things that we do throughout the year. So there's ways to support us. If you come to our annual Freedom Fund event, then you automatically are a member. So there's ways to support us, support our events. And also, we need more expertise. We need more support on our board to make sure that we're holding people accountable. We know that we are still fighting racism and discrimination every day in every aspect. So the work goes on, the struggle goes on, but by becoming a member, you are helping us. And so that's the kinds of things we do. We try to get out there in the community. We go to where the people are. So I've seen many of you go off Street Park and at Q House, and sometimes we do smaller events. Wherever we can go, that's where we're going, to make sure that as many people first are registered, but then we also do the work around educating people. Now, this year, we have a huge canvas that we're going to be doing on Monday evening, and we do need volunteers. We'll be meeting at 1389 Chapel Street the 7th, which is the evening before the election. Knocking on doors, making sure people know where their polling station is, making sure that they have the information, that they're motivated to get out there to vote. The day of the election this year, not every year, but this year, we are collaborating with a few groups. So we'll be working the polls, handing out cards so that people know to vote yes for early voting. Because although we've been doing a lot through social media and email blasts, we just don't know that a lot of people know us or will go in to vote and will know about early voting. So we are going to be at a lot of the polling stations handing out palm cards, reminding people to vote early. So that's what we're doing the day of the election, but the evening before, all are invited to join in. We'll be hitting different various neighborhoods, especially lower turnout neighborhoods in our community, We are a grassroots organization, so we're taking it old school. We're knocking on doors. We'll have door knockers that will have QR codes so that those that are going out there can make sure the people know where to go, and that we're telling them the same kind of things we've been talking about all evening, why they should vote, and please vote. Make sure you have a plan to vote. We want to make sure, I have said it several times tonight, for each of you on this call to make sure the power of 5, and not the 5 people you already know are going to vote, but that helps. And then also, if you want to canvass with us on Monday evening, please come on out, 1389 Chapel Street. We have door knockers. We'll be going to various communities. We certainly need some males to be with us. So for the men of Omega Psi Phi, or those that are not a member of Omega Psi Phi, but are a man and would like to help, that's helpful. Women, we always show up. I know I can count on some of the women to show up, but we want to make sure it's safe and everybody's comfortable, and we have groups that will go out. So that's happening for Monday evening.
Thank you. The next question, I'll go to Karima. BLM 860 is supporting Green Party candidates. What are your thoughts on voting for third-party candidates in our current system?
As the town clerk, I have no opinion.
Jackie.
Nonpartisan. Thank you.
I think
Last
it's a great
question.
idea. I think it depends, AJ. If you don't mind, I'll answer the question very succinctly. I think whoever's the best candidate deserves your vote. It's as simple as that. Whether they're green, whether they're Dems, whether they're Republicans, whoever's the best candidate deserves your vote. Who has a track record of supporting our issues, have a track record of doing what's right by our people and our community. I think you have to give everyone. It's ridiculous to sit up here and just say only vote for this particular party, only vote for this. No, that's ridiculous. Any candidate, if properly vetted, who has your best interest at heart and has a proven track record of doing so, if they're green, if they're pink, if they're blue, whatever, I think it's fine. I endorse it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. And I have one other question for you, Mike. You referenced Malcolm X. Something that stood out to me, Malcolm X reference, not verbatim. Democrats are the sly foxes and Republicans are growling wolves. When it comes to politics, with that being said, why do our communities subscribe to voting a particular party opposed to being independent and voting for the best policies?
Yeah, our community is basically we're ignorant about the vote. Do you realize? I mean, coming out of slavery, the Democrats basically was the Confederacy, and the Republicans were the abolitionists. The party of Lincoln, they were the abolitionists. That all changed around the time of Roosevelt in that election, and then but it's and things have began to switch around that time. By the time Kennedy ran, of course, blacks became Democrats, and whites started shifting to the Republican Party. So that's, if you look at the history of politics in this country, that's basically how it went. Blacks in the 19th century were Republicans, and in the 20th century late 20th century became Democrats, and that's where we stand. The people who stood in our way, the segregationists, were Democrats in the South. Those are the people who stood in our path. I guess what Malcolm was speaking to is our ability to be independent thinkers. Don't simply, your allegiance is important. I'm here to say that. I'm not aligned with any particular party. I'm registered as a Democrat. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna vote for the best candidate. You understand? Because that is my right, that is my privilege, and as a sophisticated voter, I recognize that. Now, sometimes I'll be very honest with you. I have to hold my nose and go to the poll and say this is the lesser of two evils, and I got to do what I got to do. I don't like doing that. I like to be vote basically on principle. And I want there to be something substantive about the candidate that I'm supporting. But I guess what Malcolm is basically saying is don't allow yourself to be tricked or fooled or forced into basically identifying with one particular group. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think it's important for all of us to be independent thinkers so that people don't take your vote for granted. People don't sit around and say, I got them in my pocket. That's a done deal. Let's move on. And when we get to that point, when the Black community get to that point, I think we'll have a lot more respect, politically speaking.
Thank you. That concludes the questions, Brother Walton.
All right, so I think we've come to the conclusion of our program. I just want to take the time to thank our panelists for such great information. I want to thank the audience for your participation with your statements and your questions. And I just want to remind folks to get out there and exercise your right to vote. Take 5 with you, not people that you know, right? But 5 other people, and get out there and exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 8th. Just to add a note, just to keep in mind too, we have opportunities to get out there and do some voter education on Saturday down at 200 Orange Street at 10 a.m. with Tiama Movement and Black Men Vote Too, and then an opportunity to do some canvassing with the NAACP on Monday night. Just to let folks know that these sessions are recorded, and once the link is up, you'll have the opportunity to share it with your audiences, with your networks. We tend to put these on our YouTube page, so they're in our archives. I think this is one that can be played over and over again. So I just want to again take the opportunity to thank you all for being here tonight, and continue to be educated and to become sophisticated voters. And I will turn it back over to Brother Bosselis to take us out.
Thank you, Brother Walton. Just reiterating, thank you for joining us. We hope that you continue to support us. We'll have another one out next month, so please be on the lookout for that. Thank you and have a good night.
Hey, Carla, I see you.
Yeah,
you all.
Carl was in there, yeah.
Thank you to the panelists. Thank you,
Good
AJ,
night.
Kevin, and everyone who stuck around. It's important. Let's do this.
Thank
Nicely
you.
done. Very nicely
Thank
done.
you for your service, Gary Winfield. We see you. We know you're busy, but we appreciate you, and Karima and everybody.
Yes.
Thank
Have a good one.
Thank you
you.
all.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.